Yeah, hello all. Thanks for joining. So I'll just give a couple of minutes for people to join. If not, you'll start the session. Please confirm in the chat whether you guys can hear me. Yeah. Thanks. So did someone downloaded the resource like the ISO or yeah, hi, hi. Yeah, I guess we can start the session. So right. Once again, welcome to the session. And so these are all the basic information. So or the general info for the course. So yeah, so this is the timing like from 8 to 9 p.m. IST, and you can scan here to register. And even I will send the link at the last for the people who are there willing to register for the course. And you can scan this QR code for the PDF file of the course content, which we discussed yesterday, right? And if you're having any issues in the login to the portal or any issues related to Logic Labs, you can reach out to this contact numbers or you can drop an email to this one and they will be responding within some time. And this is the working hours, like from Monday to Saturday. The working hours would be 9 to 7 p.m. IST. Okay? And please do join this WhatsApp group and second send it. Yeah. So just now I sent the WhatsApp group in the chat. Yeah. So and yesterday's recording you can access through this YouTube link. And yeah, we'll start today's session. So I hope you guys did downloaded the resource. Let me once again show you which one to be downloaded. So you just type bit.ly/Linux development. Okay, so let me send that also in the chat. Or this, both are same links. So you just go there and you'll see this. So all these are related to our course only, and go to the first directory. So here you just download these two files. So first thing I will explain you what is virtualization and the difference between virtualization and containers. And later we will be seeing the what is the booting process. So today's session also would be a theory part. So yeah, and like in my previous batches, people were complaining that they can't really download this file. Like if you don't have a stable network, you might have a hard time downloading this huge file. So instead, you can download via torrent as well. So you just Google uTorrent and yeah, so you can download this tool and yeah. So for the Windows, you have separate link, and for Mac, you have different link. So I'm just sending in the chat for the Windows one because I can't include that exe here, so it will throw here actually. So through that torrent, it is will be the same file actually. Sorry, you can resume actually. So you can resume since it is a huge file, right? It is a different way of downloading, a peer-to-peer way. So it will be easy for you to download this huge file, this first torrent or the second. Anything is fine. Or if you download from the official site also is fine. It's your choice. But please do have a working ISO. Okay. And we didn't discuss yesterday on the question paper. So this is the actual question paper. Okay. So for the RHCSA exam. So the questions would be at least 21 to 23 you might expect. So it depends on that particular time what they are asking. But mostly the concepts would be the same. So there would be at least 2 or 3 user management questions and so a specific set of disk management questions. So you can expect the almost same, or if you know the concepts easily you can attempt. So we will too deep into all the concepts. So don't worry. So you should not even worry about anything in the exam point of view because almost we will cover everything and we will cover much more than this one. So easily you can adapt and if they are asking a different question also easily you can you will be in a position to answer that as well, right? So again, it's a practical exam. There is, you can see there is no like multiple choice. So if you don't know, let's say you don't know how to answer this ACL, like you can use the help command of each commands or binaries, but still you should know how to configure it. So if you don't know or if you didn't practice well, you can't attend that question, right? So it's that straightforward. So that's what. That is also one of the main reasons still this exam has its credibility after these many years. And people do prefer RHCSA knowledge for even if you're trying for DevOps or any stream in this infra side. So you can, so it has its credibility for sure. You mentioned in your resume, right? So yeah. And this is also included in this resource. Okay. So, and this file actually, there is an updated version of this one. So I will upload it. So this is what your vSphere, VMware vSphere. Yeah, so VMware workstation. So this is what we will typically use for the time being and for our lab, we'll be using this one. But in your production servers or in your work environment, you would use VMware VMvisor or vSphere. Okay, so there are two things. So let me try to start this one just for a like, just give me 5 minutes. It will take some time to start. So in the meantime, while it is starting, we will see what is virtualization exactly. Because yesterday Michael asked, oh, like why we need that ISO in the first place, right? But that is a fair question because you might never, like till now, you might have never used these kind of ISOs or like typically you might have not. So yeah, it's already on. Quickly, let me show you this one and later we will see that. Virtualization. Not this one, Michael. So you will be downloading this VMware workstation. Okay. So not that one. So don't worry. This one just for your anyhow in your work environment you will be using this ESXi or VMware vSphere. Okay. So like, let me anyhow I will show this in later session for everyone. Because this consumes a lot of resource. Okay, so like I have only 8 gigs of memory, so this itself will consume 4 gigs, which is a lot. That's it. So first thing, let me explain what is virtualization. And while we are seeing virtualization, we will be seeing what is containerization. That is also not a buzzword anymore. So people started using that. So first thing is this one is virtualization. So the base OS or the first thing is your what is the operating system you are using in your laptop or your computer, right? So in my case, it's we call that as a base OS or just OS in our machine, right? So in my case, it is a Windows 11, and in container also it would be the same. And on top of that, we are going to install, or I already installed VMware Workstation, right? So this is that tool, and yeah, so we can initialize. And on top of VMware Workstation only, we are going to install the operating system, which is anything you can install. So you can install a Dell or a Windows Server, even again another Windows. If you want to test out a new version, so you can install it in virtual environment. So this is the new thing. So like till now, you might have installed only in your laptop or directly to your hard disk. You might have not installed virtually. So now what is virtual here? So virtually, you're going to allocate all these resources, whichever you see here in the performance tab, CPU, memory, disk, and your internet. So these are all actually your system resources. And you're going to share it, right? So it is called as resource sharing. And that is the main aspect, which would be like before virtualization, you can't perform these, right? So one D option is to install again and again, or if you install Windows 11 on your machine, you don't have a choice, right? So you need to again prefer a new machine for your Mac OS or any other OS, right? So if you want to explore some other options, you don't have a choice during like 20 years ago, it could be. So now it's like just like that, you can install any operating system without any compatibility issue. There would be compatibility requirement would be there, but it's almost like eligible. Any system would be eligible. So, yeah, so you can use Windows anything you can install, but this is a virtual layer. So that's what, like if you just go to your task manager and uh, go to performance tab and the CPU, here you see this virtualization is enabled. So by default, all your motherboard manufacturers, right? So they will disable this virtualization. Like if you buy a new laptop, right? So they would disable it by default. So you need to enable it in your BIOS. So anyhow, we will see that. So how to enable it. And that's what. So this layer, right? It will be doing the resource of your all your CPU, memory, and all these components and network. Right? So that's what your basic virtualization, and on top of this layer, or on like let's say in this OS, we are going to install any software. It's your choice, but you can install any software, and you can take advantage of this. Right? So let's say you can install HTTP, anything. Right? So that's what. So all this requirement, or it does run on Linux kernel, or it could be just like a typical operating system as you run in your base machine. Okay, and there is one limitation which you have in virtualization. We will discuss that, and let's see how containers works and why still, why people are migrating from virtual to containers. In like most of the startups nowadays do that because let's see that. Okay, so because there is a huge resource advantage over containers, so we will see that. So here also you just need to install Docker or any container tools. So Docker is kind of a market leader now. So let's say Docker for Windows. So if you're installing this one, and on top of it, obviously you're going to pull the Docker image. But in between, there is one layer which is called as Docker engine. So what this Docker engine does, right? So it will convert, or it is the sole responsible for like running any mission. So here it is like a whole operating system, right? So the RHEL, or like you're literally installing a OS on top of another OS virtually. That's what this virtualization concept is. Here, you are not going to do that, but this Docker engine will trick the system to uh, like think like this, or like this is the processing thing, right? So that's how important this is, especially for containers. And what is container now? So here, an easy example. So you have um, so let me go to the site where you download the images. So you just go to this hub.docker.com and you can even explore it. So click on explore, and you will be treated with these many official images, right? So what is an image then? So image is a bundle of that specific software. So you see the Ubuntu or Python or Redis. So these kind of, so let me go to Ubuntu. And this is a low level version of the same operating system. So you have a full-fledged operating system, which is like the, in our case, it is 9 gigs, that ISO file, right? So whereas here, the same operating system, here it would be 400 maximum, right? The same functionality, the shell and the software is almost, it would be the same. Few functionality, it would be like it won't be available, but as an end user, you won't even notice that, because for whatever we require, it would be already in that image, right? So that's what you fetch from this hub.docker.com, and it's an open source, okay? And even you can create your own image and upload it to this site, okay? So you just, if you type this command, it will be pulling this Ubuntu latest version, and it will be like 350 MB, I guess. So that's what that is, an image. So again, it's not a container. So how or when it will become a container, right? Right. It's an image, just like your ISO. Okay? So ISO is an image. So here you will have all the other elements which should support your machine. So here, all the drivers, everything, it will be already packed with this ISO. Whereas here, you just have this base image. So you are lacking all the libraries and the drivers involved, right? So all these elements would be created once you create a container around that image, right? So that's what And, that's how it's important actually. And again, it's a lightweight. So you might ask, okay, once we create this container, it might increase the size, obviously, no. And the functionality also stays the same. So library files, all the important library files, especially, and drivers. I'm just mentioning basic things. A lot it will be installing. So yeah, that's what. And this would be called as container. This is a great clear. Yeah. So cumulatively, this would form a container. And one major benefit or downfall in your virtualization and advantage of containers, right? So here you have versioning. So if you see this Ubuntu one, so you have different versions, or even you can create your own version out of it, right? So you can simply send that specific version to your colleague or to anyone in your team. So there won't be a dependency issue, right? So let's say all these drivers and library files are like, it's kind of like an archive file, right? Or a compressed zip file. It is like you have bundled everything together and it could be compatible in any machine if they have the specific Docker installed. Obviously, they would have the Docker, right? So the point here is, so simply you can send this one to someone and in your team. So it should work. Whereas if you want like someone to use this HTTP specific version, or you're experimenting a software on your VM, right? So they should be having the exact versioning of your ISO and the same software. And it is like, it's not a challenging part nowadays, but still it's like you need to consider it, right? So whereas here, just like that, you can push it to someone, or even you can push it to Docker, uh, this online repo, and they can pull it from here. So it's that easy and convenient. Whereas here, you need to do some groundwork and bundle it and send it. It's a bit hassle here, right? So that's why people or most companies combine these two. So in virtual environment, they are using containers. Okay, so that's the main thing. And so as I told, we need to enable in the BIOS. So I will show you how to do that. But before that, this is the booting procedure we'll be discussing for the day. So, uh, so first thing is what happens. So as a sysadmin, you should understand what happens after you press the power button, right? So that's a typical question. Like in your interviews, they used to ask, not sure nowadays, but it is a very common question in sysadmin interviews, right? So what would happen if you press the power button, or what is the background process? So once you press the power button, at least it might take from 30 seconds to 5 minutes. It depends on the hard disk speed or your SSD speed. Like it will come to the lock screen, right? Or the dashboard, sorry, or your home screen. So these many steps are happening in the background, and we have seen only the Linux based booting process. So Windows also almost same, only few. So this one would be a different one. So few things it might be different. So anyhow, I'll discuss that as well. Okay. So let me. Right. So first thing is, right. So once you press the power button, let me quickly show you the numbers. Right. So let's say you press the power button, right? So I'm not getting too technical, but the point is all these are so this is your motherboard, by the way, and you will be connecting all the components, right? So it will be sending a small voltage throughout your machine, and uh, all the components it will be sending. So if there is a failure of a component, or if something is not plugged in correctly, let's say most cases the common thread would be your memory. So memory might have not be seated, or your GPU, if you unplugged, you might have not plugged in correctly. So that's what, like, these kind of issues are hardware issues, and the first layer itself, or the first step itself, it would be identifying that. So the process of finding that is called as post power on self test. So it is just like a diagnostic test it will be performing, and it will be sending signal to every components. And if it is failing, so here you do see, so here there is a LED light. So in this machine, it's just 4 LEDs, but in some like costly motherboards, you might see a error code in the display itself. So let me show you. Yeah, so you see, the error code is already in your motherboard, and it will be already included in your manual, which error code means what is the failure of the hardware component. You can see in this error code, or you can diagnose here itself. But the point here is so before booting itself, there was a hardware issue. It won't boot to that hardware, right? So let's say you are having multiple hard disks or SSDs. So let's say one SSD is like there is a physical damage to it, or it's like not compatible to that motherboard. It won't boot at the first step. So that's the very, very important point. And you have some more solutions in your data centers. Okay. So in your data center, you have one more controller called as your just let me show you that. So this is the your so I'm just giving a HP's data center grade server. So you will see all this information in your ILO, or this is the dashboard for your mission. Okay, so this is there is a physical uh, card you will be inserting in your, or a physical PCI card you will be inserting in your motherboard. So that will fetch all this information. And there would be a separate power source for that as well. So if something went wrong, right? So you will see amber light in that, right? So let's say there is a memory failure or any issue. So like once you start working as a Linux admin, so you will be eventually seeing any one of these. So these are all physical servers. Okay, so we will discuss that as well. So what is a physical machine or a virtual environment like AWS, GCP and all. But the point here is, so this is the what the first step would be. So if there is a hardware issue, you must be notified any method, right? So that's the first step. And once if all the hardware is passed, or all the hardware is booted, next step would be booting to your BIOS. So BIOS is very, very important, especially in any operating system. Not only like a typical system, even in your Raspberry Pi, which is a small computer, right? So even that has its own BIOS. Any operating system must have a BIOS. So what is a BIOS then? So BIOS full form is basic input output system, which is every hardware component which you see physically in your machine, right? So anything you can connect to your motherboard, it will be visible in your BIOS screen, right? So and even each vendor has their own BIOS, and why I'm showing you my MSI code is even this is a MSI machine actually. So that's the main reason, and they have easy to like understanding this BIOS would be much clean actually. And yeah, so this is what my system's BIOS would be. Okay, so you have the CPU frequency actually. So what is the frequency? Once again, it's uh, the frequency in which your CPU or memory is running currently. Even you can change that, and that process is called as overclocking. So I'm not going too deep into that, but the point is that's like the basic thing here. So here in my case itself, so you can see this speeds in your task manager, right? So if you see my memory, it's like the basic one. It's like 2667 megahertz, and I can increase that. So my uh, RAM or my memory sticks can go till 3200 megahertz, right? So you these kind of frequency changes or anything, I need to change it in this BIOS only. Okay, so or if I change it in my software level also, it will be modifying here after redo. Okay, so and not only that, you can see the real-time CPU and motherboard temperature, and your fan is running or at which RPM your fans are running, your CPU and your case fans. In some cases, it will be showing, and all the basic system information, right? So which CPU, motherboard, and once again, you need to update your BIOS every now and then, not frequently, like at least once a year, it will automatically update in your laptops mostly. But if you are using a PC like mine, at least every twice a year, you might update this one. And the very, very important section here is your boot priority, right? So that's what very, very important is which device or which storage you need to boot it after you are logged in, or like after this section, which one to be considered. So that's the important thing, which is hard disk or SSD, anything it can be. And what is these two? So few people don't know this hard disk full form. Sorry, HDD is hard disk. So there is a physical disk it will be spinning, and SSD full form is solid state drive. So as the name suggests, there is no physical disk spinning. It's just like your memory. It would be. Oops. The bad image of its quality, but the point is, this is your hard disk actually, so the bigger one, and this is your SATA SSD. Okay, so SATA interface SSD. So this is a SATA interface, and this one would be your M.2 SSD or your PCI SSD. So this is a different interface, right? So this is the size difference. Here there would be a physical discs or the plates would be spinning, whereas here and these two, there is no physical disc per se, right? So just like that, it will be booting, and read and write speed would be significantly higher than a physical hard drive. So that's what these three are. Three. Yeah. While installing, we'll see what is that interfaces like SATA, SCSA. So that's what. So we need to decide which one to be booted first. So that's very, very important. And if you have a bootable disk, right? So if you are connecting a removable pin drive, and that is a bootable one, you can change this boot order. Right? So that's what like removable disk or pin drive, and your CD or DVD. If you are still having that CD DVD, you can use that. Okay, so that would be the third bootable disk. So like that you have. So if you go to this image, you see this is the boot priority order, right? So let's say we selected the first one, which is our hard disk, right? So after that, let me show you the hard disk physically. Right? So this is your physical hard disk, and so this is the platelets, right? So and this is a spindle, and this IO head. So it will be like very fast. It will be uh, moving, and that is what like that's how it will read the data, right? So there would be uh, like like there will be at least 6 disks in your hard disk, and it depends on your size as well. So let's say you are taking a 1 TB hard drive, so it would be at least 6 disks in your machine, sorry, in your hard drive, and that's what like. So why I'm explaining this is so the next step is it need to define or it need to identify which sector is the first one it need to put. So that's the reason. For the first time, if you press your power button in like previous days, it's like you would hear the spinning before even seeing the screen. Why? Because it will figure out which sector it need to put, but it will be happening very fast. But the point is, it will figure out in which sector. So it will divide this into different sectors actually. So which sector should be booted first? So that would be our next one, which is this one. Let's take 8 sectors. Okay. So which sector is the bootable one, and it need to boot to that, right? So let's say this is the first sector, so it will boot to this one. And what resides in this one, we will see that. But this sector or this partition style is, so we discussed yesterday, right? So it is MBR, which is master boot record. And GPT also would be the same. It will follow the same sector based like booting thing. But the point is the difference between MBR and GPT. So there is 4 primary sectors only you can create in your MBR, and the fourth one will automatically become a logical, whereas in GPT or GUID partition table, right? So you can create 128 primary sectors. So you see the difference, right? From 4 in MBR, and there it would be 128. So that is the latest actually. And Windows has been using GPT for quite some time, like from 2008 or so, they started using that, or they insist or by default it will be using that GPT only. So that's the reason you won't be encountering that like primary disk or this issue you will never encounter primary partition. So because you can create a number of primary partitions, there is no issues. But even in Windows, you can convert from GPT to MBR. It's your choice. Okay. So that's the thing. And this first sector, so what it will be residing is your grub screen. So now we figure out which sector it should do. And this is where your hard disk might fail. So let's say if it didn't found the booting sector or that boot partition, let's say in your Windows, so if it didn't found this, so in my case, it would be a good example. So I have a separate disk for my data as well as my C drive resides in a different disk. Let's say my disk 2 is failing. Or this is an SSD, by the way. So this SSD is failing due to some hardware issue or something. My system won't even boot, right? So that's what, like if it is failing to find that boot sector or boot image, that's it. It can't proceed further. So it can fail in every step. Guys. That's the very important thing. Or your booting procedure, right? So it will fail eventually. So you are If there is an issue, obviously it will fail, and you should be in a position to diagnose that, right? So that's the one. And now we figure out, okay, this boot sector, it should boot. And let's move on to the next one, which would be your grub. So this grub only will be residing in your this booting sector, and it will be very small in size, guys. Okay, and people do still have the or still believe the myth that BIOS is also residing under your hard disk. Obviously, no. So your BIOS is residing in your motherboard only. So if your hard disk is failed, still you can boot to your BIOS, right? So obviously your BIOS is residing in your hard disk. So sorry, your motherboard. Yeah. Now you will be booting to grub. So what is grub? So grub full form is Grand Unified Bootloader. So a bootloader, or what is the use of a bootloader, right? So you're going to notify your machine that, okay, these are all the let's say you are having multiple operating systems. So which drivers or which libraries it need to boot further. So it is just like a kind of metadata of the next booting operating system. So you might have came across dual boot or even triple boot is there. So at least once in your Windows, you might have seen this screen. So let me show you that. So you might have seen this multiple operating system, right? So this is not the same concept as virtualization. So you are physically using the either one. So if you are using Ubuntu here, all your resource will be used only for Ubuntu. Simultaneously, you can't use Windows 10, right? So, but you might have seen this screen, or if you are used Linux or a different OS, so you might have seen this kind of screen. So, yeah, so you might have seen this screen, right? So you have Ubuntu as well as Windows 7. So the point is you have to, or even multiple options. It depends on how much size you are allocating to your disk. So let's say you are having three OS, which would be one is RHEL, and next one would be Ubuntu, and the next one would be your Windows. So all these three would be residing under the same disk, right? So and this is your so you need to decide which one to be booted, either RHEL, Ubuntu, or Windows 10, because all has their own boot information and the metadata, as well as if you select RHEL, so the driver information or everything will be loaded based on that operating system which you are selecting. So it is very typical, or you must go through the screen, and you might ask, okay, only I having only one OS, but still this grub is needed or not. Obviously, even if you are having only one also, so you will go through this, but it like there won't be any choice, or it won't show you any other options. So only this rail will be shown, right? So that's your grub. And what after grub, as I told, you need to go to the most important section in your whole server is your kernel. Or yesterday we did saw the GitHub page for the kernel, right? So that is what it will be booted next. So what this kernel does and why it is still very important, right? So kernel is the sole responsible for having all your disk information, driver info, and your disk partition, or like it all comes under disk management, right? So, and even your process, which process it need to boot. So process management, and especially it will be booting the init process. So that will be the first process. So it will be booting to that one, and much more actually. So it will be performing in your kernel. So I'm just giving a basic example of what is possible in kernel, but it's very important actually. And if this kernel is having some issue, or even kernel resides in your hard disk, right? So if let's say if there is a hard disk space issue, or something went wrong in this kernel, so you have a kernel panic. It is called this. Means it won't boot. So it will do a boot loop. So it will come to this stage. Again, it will go back. Your system will turn off. Again, it will start these steps, and it will be doing in a loop until you fix that issue, right? So that's how important kernel is. So you should be very careful. Let's say you are mostly you will never edit your kernel parameters. So in very specific scenarios only you do, but you should be very careful while doing that as well, right? So yeah, you can go through these. Uh, yeah, so it will be putting this first process, which is init. And so, yeah, it will be having all the hardware info, especially drivers. So in Windows, we do have, so if you just go to device manager, all these are different drivers in my machine, right? So, or like physically, I do have a audio input, and these many audio input drivers are there, right? So like that, all components has its own driver. So driver is like a middleman. So that's what will communicate my hardware signals as a digital one, and it will be prompted in my operating system, or it is the one converts that. So if there is a hardware issue or driver issue, so like you need to diagnose that right away. And kernel is the one having all, or that's the one loading all the respective drivers, compatible drivers, very important, right? So that's the kernel's main work it will be. And next one would be the init. So if your kernel is booted, so almost you are done. So there won't be any other issues once you are in your init process. So init is a, so init, and the next one also is like a combined one, which is run level. So we'll see both simultaneously. Init, run level. Let me show you this configuration. So, just go to this boot. And yeah, so in your boot, so I'm just showing you the system configuration of your Windows. So your Windows also you can remove the GUI and only show the CLI bar, means it will be only showing you or booting the command prompt only. So you have only that access, and you have safe boot option. So if you enable this and enable this network minimal and all, so that's what your init process is. So let me show you here. You see, almost it would be the same, right? So you have network, which is this second option, sorry, third one. So without network means it will be a minimal one, and the single user mode is this no GUI mode. So obviously the naming convention would be different, but the concept would be the same, right? So which mode you need to boot once your kernel is booted. So which one it should be, or which run level it should be chosen, right? So we have 6 levels, or 7 actually, including 0. And yeah, so we'll see one by one. So 0, if you give init 0, it will be shutting down your machine. Okay? Shut down. And how about init 1? So if you're selecting init 1 as the default one, so init 1 will be for single user. So we will see what is single user mode in data session. And yeah, so how about init 2? It would be multi-user without internet. And Linux is a multi-user operating system, which is you can open a different sessions for the same user. Without init 3 multi-user with network. So the simple thing is it will load the network driver in init. Sorry, it won't load network driver in init 2, and it will load the network driver in init 3. And init 3 is the most preferred one. So init 4. Init 4 is like it's not being utilized. So init 5 to be. So init 5 is excellent or 0. So uh, the even in your Red Hat, there is a GUI mode. Okay, so obviously we will install GUI mode only. So that's your init 5, right? So and the last one would be init 6, which is your reboot. So if you are selecting init 6, it means you are rebooting your machine, right? And you have multiple run levels in your machine. So this are all init run level or init levels. And let's say you are by default, you would select these two. Init 3 and init 5 will be the most used one. Okay, so yeah, these two. And the run level. So what is the meaning of run levels is it is nothing but your startup programs. So in your Windows, you have startup. So these many startup programs are there in my machine. So like that, you have multiple startup programs to be initiated along with this booting or this run levels, right? So that's what you will select here, right? So you will be placing those uh, files or those binaries in this run level, or you can place it in etc init.d. So there is a common place. So like let's say once you place in init.d, obviously, one second. Yeah. So if you place it in init.d, obviously it will be booting along with your machine or along with your kernel, it will be booting, right? So that's the mostly we will place there. And if you still want to place it based on the run level only, you can place it depends on the. So this rc.d is nothing but a directory, and this is the rc3.d. So like that, each run level you can place it. Okay, and after this only you will see your logs. Right? So yeah, this would be your voting process. Any doubts? And I didn't explain too much, so it would take at least 3 to 4 hours. Just for BIOS itself, it might take a lot of time. So yeah, so the baseline would be this much thing happens. Like once you press the power button and wait for 2 minutes, this many things happens in the background. And almost same. So here instead of MBR, it would be GPT in your Windows. Even grub screen is there in your Windows. Instead of kernel, so there is a different version of kernel in your Windows, and init is also there. So the init, the equivalent to init is your advanced boot option. So yeah, so you see, enable safe mode with network, safe mode with command prompt, and yeah, so these three are the same. So yeah, almost not the same exact thing, but it does the same job. Right? So that's what. So that is your booting procedure, and it's already done, right? So we will install our VM in the next session. Okay. So yeah. Any doubts till now? Yeah. Fine. Let me just give you the link to enroll for the session. And you just please go through the previous batches and yeah, you can enroll for the session. Okay. Yeah. So if there is no doubts, please do join in tomorrow's session. So you'll install the lab, right? If there is no doubts, once again, thanks for joining the session. Thanks. Thanks a lot.